Okay, let's dive right into an absolutely wild paradox. In today's explainer, we're unpacking a bizarre reality playing out across the business world right now. Tech giants are literally pulling in record profits, yet, at the exact same time, they're firing huge swaths of their workforce. And why? To pour those saved salaries directly into AI. Now, on the surface, this feels like an isolated loss for the employees and a huge win for the companies. But as we're going to see, it's actually a much more dangerous game than it appears.
So consider this massive contradiction. If you look at the major players, companies like Microsoft, Oracle, Amazon, they are doing their all-time best financially. They aren't laying people off because their businesses are failing. No, they're aggressively slashing human jobs to fund AI development, simply because they believe cutting salary costs will push those already massive profits even higher. It seems like a super straightforward cost-cutting move, right? But there's a massive hidden cost that these companies are racing toward.
And that brings us to a fascinating new research paper by researchers Brett and Gary out of Boston University and UPenn. They introduce a concept called the AI Layoff Trap. Basically, it suggests that this relentless corporate automation could collectively trigger a global economic crisis. It's a really brilliant thought exercise. It asks us to step back and look at the whole board, not just a single company's profit and loss statement. Because while replacing a human with AI might be a high-five moment for one specific company today, it could be a massive, devastating loss for the entire global economy tomorrow.
Let's move into part one and look at how this creates a negative economic cycle.
To truly grasp the AI layoff trap, we absolutely have to understand the interconnected nature of the global market. Because think about it, an employee for one company is fundamentally a paying customer for another. Let's trace the path of the money here. When a giant tech company lays off a software engineer to fund their new AI project, that engineer loses their income. And because they have no salary, they cancel their upcoming vacation. Suddenly, the travel site they use loses revenue. The airlines lose revenue. To cope, those airlines are forced to lay off their own staff. And what do those unemployed airline workers do? Well, they immediately cancel their tech subscriptions and stop buying goods online. Boom! The shockwave bounces right back to the company that started the cycle.
It all boils down to this really simple, inescapable question. If everyone is unemployed, who buys the products? Reduced consumer spending from laid-off workers creates a devastating negative cycle for all businesses. People without salaries don't buy new clothes, they don't travel, and they certainly don't subscribe to premium software. By blindly racing to automate every single job, companies are ultimately destroying their very own consumer base. Without consumers with disposable income, demand just crashes, and the whole economy grinds to a halt.
Which leads us to the next piece of the puzzle, the paradox of rationality. To understand how brilliant, highly paid executives can make such seemingly destructive macroeconomic choices, we have to look at how human behavior operates in a competitive system. Imagine you're in a crowded sporting event. If you're sitting down and struggling to see, standing up is a very smart, completely rational decision. You get a better view. But what happens next? The person behind you has to stand up to see, then the next person. Before long, literally everyone in the stadium is standing. No one has a better view than they did when they were sitting, and now everyone's just uncomfortable. This is exactly what's happening with AI automation across the global economy.
And that brings us directly to the competitive survival trap.
Now, you might be wondering, if companies know this leads to an economic crash, if they're smart enough to realize everyone standing up ruins the game, why don't they just stop firing people? Well, the brutal reality of the free market is that leaders have to prioritize competitive survival above absolutely everything else. They operate under this terrifying mandate. If we don't automate, our competitors will. Executives are essentially forced into this AI race even if they know the long-term macroeconomic risks. Why? Because sitting it out means immediate business failure. If your competitor uses AI to cut costs and lower their prices, and you don't, you lose your market share today. You just don't have the luxury of worrying about a global recession in 5 years if your company goes bankrupt next month.
This perfectly summarizes the core thesis of the paper. Individual smart decisions equal collectively stupid outcomes. Cutting costs by replacing a massive human ops team with AI is a brilliant, totally rational, highly profitable move for a single company in isolation. It's a huge achievement for that business. But when every single company makes that exact same smart decision at the exact same time, it morphs into a collectively stupid outcome that crashes global demand.
Okay, let's pivot and look at why standard fixes completely fail here. When people talk about the threat of AI to the workforce, you usually hear the same few buzzwords thrown around as magical cures, but honestly, they fall apart under scrutiny. Take reskilling, for example. Even if you train displaced workers in brand new tech, companies are still using AI to keep total headcount low, so hiring just won't outpace firing. What about universal basic income, or UBI? The paper argues that completely fails because giving people a baseline survival check doesn't deter corporations from endlessly automating. The same goes for profit sharing or ESOPs. The AI race continues regardless. And just leaving it up to the free market? Well, as we just saw with the stadium analogy, the free market is exactly what accelerates the overall disaster because everyone is acting in their own immediate self-interest.
So that leads us to a highly provocative solution proposed by the researchers, an automation tax.
If reskilling is a myth, UBI doesn't stop the root cause, and the free market is making it worse, what does this research actually propose to save the workforce? Their primary idea is an automation tax, and it basically operates on a sliding scale based on how aggressively a company replaces humans with AI. If a company has a low rate of AI replacement, they just pay a low tax penalty. Simple enough. But as a company moves to extreme AI replacement, meaning they're gutting their human workforce to automate everything possible, they get hit with a maximum, exponentially higher tax penalty.
Now, understanding the true goal here is absolutely paramount. The goal of this tax is not to kill technological innovation or ban AI entirely. I mean, that's impossible anyway. Instead, the goal is to financially penalize the rapid overuse of AI. By making aggressive automation incredibly expensive through taxation, you intentionally slow down the destructive economic cycle. It effectively forces companies to calculate a real balance between tech and human capital, basically buying the global economy the crucial time it needs to adapt before consumer demand entirely collapses.
However, as the paper rightfully points out, we have to look at the practical challenges here. Implementing this tax would be incredibly messy in reality. First off, it requires massive, totally unprecedented government intervention in the private sector. Furthermore, how do you even legally define automation? Is a new Excel macro considered automation? Where exactly is the line drawn? Trying to enforce this globally could cause massive regulatory chaos, making it a brilliant theory on paper, but an incredibly difficult reality to actually execute. So, as we watch tech giants post record profits while simultaneously laying off thousands, we really have to ask ourselves how this story ends. Will companies be forced by competitive survival to keep firing employees until we hit a collectively stupid global economic crisis? Or will we implement something as radical as an automation tax in time to save the consumer base? It's a terrifying, absolutely fascinating question, and the answer is going to define the very future of our global economy.